Hi, everyone. Welcome to our third webinar in our three-part series focused on preparing for remote work. Today's session, we will be going over rapid deployment of BlueJeans and best practices associated. My name is Maggie Bliss, and I'm moderating today's session. Leading today's webinar is Missy Dunham, our BlueJeans Customer Success Training and Operations Manager, and Liz Ogile, a part of our excellent onboarding team, and Stuart Mitchington, our Technical Services Manager, will help address questions at the end. So before we begin, let's go over a few housekeeping items. First, we are on BlueJeans Events product, which means you are in a one-way viewing experience. This means that if you're having any troubles with technical issues, please put them in the chat on the side and we'll address those as soon as they come in. And if you have any questions for our host today, please put them on the side and we'll answer them in the Q&A portion. Lastly, the session is being recorded and we will send it to you after the event. And with that, I'll hand it over to Missy.
Great. Thanks so much, Maggie. Welcome, everyone. Today, we're focused on rapid deployment best practices for administrators. Now, many companies like yourselves find themselves working from home unexpectedly. Usually, launching BlueJeans is an exciting time. You get to launch a fabulous tool. It's fun, it's user-friendly, and there's a ton of great benefits that come not just with BlueJeans, but the entire work from home experience. Now, in a traditional deployment lifecycle, you might have a couple of weeks, and you'll have things like a solid infrastructure to work with, a dedicated team perhaps to sign out all the different tasks to, and you're going to have time to plan, to test, to be able to generate excitement for your users. The typical deployment, again, for small businesses runs usually a couple of weeks. For larger enterprises, you might even be looking at a couple of months. The challenge today is that you guys might find yourselves making this happen in a matter of days. And you're working with a unique set of challenges like, what is the employee's intranet at home? What does that look like? Do they have the right equipment? Do we have them join from VPN? And how do we establish clear expectations? Not to mention this whole deploying a brand new service in a couple of days. That's where we come in. We're here to help, and we've got a ton of great resources to take a little bit of that weight off your shoulders. So if you missed our first two webinars in this series, it's worth your time to circle back because they'll probably address some of the more common questions that you guys are facing. Those webinars cover the best practices from working from home. This is great for admins, managers, users, absolutely everybody who's using BlueJeans can benefit from this. There's also a hands-on in and out of BlueJeans user training. We're actually going to talk a lot about training today and all the different training paths that are available depending on what your organization's needs are. And then, of course, we're going to focus on your responsibilities as the admin. What do those tasks look like for you? And how do you prioritize that when you're working in this rapid deployment lifecycle? So right off the bat, I want to show you what resources are available. We tried to anticipate anything that you might need to do or be asked to do, and when and where possible, document it for you in advance because it's much easier to take something that already exists and modify it, make it your own, than it is to start from scratch. So this includes things for your IT team. Your IT team might have unique questions like, if we're launching BlueJeans out to our workforce, how are they managing capacity? How are they managing this influx? What does support look like? We've got all that documented so you can share that over, arm them with knowledge and a little bit of comfort in advance. They also offer this really neat heat map, which just shows the growth and the usage increases day over day since the coronavirus started. And finally, and we're going to talk about this more today, we have a BlueJeans training resource for your internal help desk teams, your admins, your administrators. A lot of times as an admin, it is not your job to also manage tier one, Doesn't mean that people won't come to you for questions. So even if that's not your primary role, you might appreciate glancing over it, if only to say, that's a great question. We do have some content on that. Here's where you can go to learn more. And we're going to talk about that again in just a little bit. Where we're going to spend most of our time is here in the middle, talking about these tools that are available to help make your guys' life easier. We're going to spend a lot of time in the Getting Started portal. And Maggie's going to throw that link and our BlueJeans blog, where all of these resources are housed, in chat for you guys in just a second, in case you want to follow along. That Getting Started portal is an end-to-end, start to finish, from task A to task Z. What is it admins might need to do in order to launch BlueJeans out into their organization? And as we go through each one, we'll talk about things like which ones you should make high priority, priority 1 for a rapid deployment, and which ones you might consider high priority but phase 2, considering the circumstances that you're facing today. As I mentioned, all the resources on the BlueJeans blog, and we update it regularly. So check back on a regular basis and see if there's anything else that you might be able to use. We also have additional things like the Working Remote Guide and a ton of best practices for your users. We're going to look today at a sample corporate intranet that you can copy paste and then make it your own to create a one-stop shop resource in-house very quickly to guide your end users. And we'll look at things like the launch or deployment email templates that you can, again, download, modify, and make your own to announce service to your users. And then tools for new users. This covers everything from a user getting started portal. This is really great for small and medium-sized businesses that you don't have the time or even the capacity to be able to handhold 10 users in your organization, or whatever the case may be. That portal does everything for you. It tells users everything from how to log in, how to download all the different apps, how to take training, what to practice, go out there, do your first test meeting, and then how to get support and share recordings and whatnot after the session. Really great end user resource. We have on-demand training, which we're going to look at today. We even have downloadable guides that you can share with your audience. They can print them out, sit them on their desk for that little extra bit of comfort in case they're nervous about using video conferencing for the first time. And we have those work remote best practices in a PDF form that you can share that we'll look at today. The link to the webinar, if you want to encourage your folks to dive a little bit deeper into some of those practices, and then a knowledge-based article that digs into each one of those best practices and how you can execute them, like running a network check and checking your bandwidth and what to do if you're at home and your internet's not great. No problem, we can help you with that too. So with that, let's jump in and get started. We're going to look at the deployment, the administrative and deployment getting started tool and the actual admin portal in real time so you guys can see it in action. So this is what that getting started portal looks like for administrators. Let me toggle over and take you that in real time. Now, you'll notice that I have options for admins and for end users. Today, I'm going to click on admins. This is where you would go to access the end user portal that we talked about. When I launch this, you're going to notice that there are 4 steps with sometimes 1 task, sometimes 2 tasks, and we'll talk about who best to task these out to. Getting started, step 1, is all about your technical setup. And this is usually done by your internal network administrator. None of these are terribly difficult, and none of them in and of themselves are terribly time consuming either. Usually the hardest part is finding the right person in your organization to partner with to get this done. When it comes to, is this a priority 1 or a priority 2? It really depends on your environment. Prior to the coronavirus rapid readiness, we would have said this is priority 1. Do this very, very first to make sure those that are on your network access all the BlueJeans resources. In this unique circumstances, your folks, a lot of them are just working from home and they won't be on your network. So in that case, it is still important, but it can be a phase 2 importance, meaning don't not do it. Eventually people will be back on your network. You're going to have to circle back to it, but it might be a phase 2, right? Share it with your IT, but don't let it be, or your network administrator, but don't let it be a roadblock. Where it still becomes critical is if you have anybody working in your office, this is still a priority 1, phase 1 item. If you have people working from home and they're using VPN, this is still a critical item. So do your own assessment. Again, in both cases, you're going to want to circle back to it. It's just do it today, or do I do it 2 or 3 days from now when it's a little bit less crazy? So this goes over things like opening your firewall ports, how do you optimize your network for video, and the subscribe to status at BlueJeans.com. I'm going to open this and show you what it looks like. I do recommend this as a critical item simply to keep you in the know. Now, as users come on, we are expanding capacity almost daily to make sure we stay ahead of that curve in terms of that increased capacity and usage. But if we should run into an issue in the days ahead, we want to make sure you are proactively in the know and have the trust and confidence that if something goes wrong, we're all hands on deck and we're going to be on top of it. The status page is where you can get those proactive notices. So take 2 seconds, go out and subscribe, have your help desk subscribe and your admin, so those folks that should know do stay in the know. This also gives you status updates. So if we're having any issues, you'll get notified when it happens and when the issue has been resolved and closed. Okay, let's close that out and go on back. The last one here, you can skip for a phase 2 if you're doing so for your network connection. This is just joining a live meeting with an engineer so that you guys can say, oh, great, how's my video? Is it working? Let me look at the traffic. How does it look when I share my video? Looks great. Thanks, buddy, so much. You can drop off the line. So it's an always running live meeting that your engineers can jump in to do a little bit of testing. Task 2 is all about determining if you're going to deploy the BlueJeans apps, and if so, how. Now, for most small and medium-sized businesses, your users can install their own applications, the individual install. In that case, it's simply a matter of setting expectations and encouragement that these will make their life easier. And there are 3 apps to consider: the desktop app, the calendar integration app. We have a couple depending on what your users use. There's one for Outlook for Windows, for Office 365, and a Google Calendar extension. And then there's also the mobile app. If your organization goes the way of individual user installs, we're just going to educate them when you send out a comm, which we'll talk about later, of the expectation to do so and the value to do so. For your larger organizations, if you use a centralized deployment tool to push these out, we support that as well. If you were to click on the links, it shows you exactly what you need to do so you can push out the MSI or whatever the case may be for your system requirements. If you are in a lockdown environment and you can't install anything, that is not a problem. Everything we do can be done directly from a browser. We do recommend, though, if you're going that route, to encourage either the Edge browser, Firefox, or Chrome. We do support Internet Explorer, Opera, and Safari, but those ones have some feature limitations. In a traditional environment, that's not a big deal. You just set expectations. In a rapid deployment, that might cause a little bit of confusion. So to keep it simple, Edge, Firefox, or Chrome. If you have any questions on any of the things that we've talked about, now's a great time to submit those in the Q&A panel so our subject matter experts can start answering those while they're top of mind. Okay, let's look at step number 2. Step number 2 is for you administrators. This is getting into the actual admin panel, and what do you do when we're in there? So let me tell you what we're going to look at first, then we'll toggle over to the admin panel and have a look live. There are 3 primary things in task 1. First, you're going to want to look at modifying group settings. I would consider this one high priority. It's very, very easy, but this is something you're going to want to look at before you deploy services so you can make any desired changes in advance. There's also an option to set up a custom landing page. This does a couple of different things. Again, easy, it's a click of a button, but instead of going to bluejeans.com/scheduling to log in and use the service, you could go to acme.com or ABC Company, whatever your company name is, you can get that custom landing page. Then you can add your logo, add your branding colors, so it has your own organization's look and feel. If you have a ton of users, there's also some added benefits that we'll talk about in just a little bit in terms of signing up your domain so that there's a little bit of automation for users who want to request accounts. The very last bullet point we're not going to look at today, it is a guided walkthrough step-by-step for admins if you want to know the nitty-gritty. Every single option, every single thing in there, how do you navigate and route, you can dive in, but I'm going to show you the basics. So with that, let us toggle over. I've got my admin page already open. I went to bluejeans.com, I logged in, and I clicked on the admin tab here at the top. Now, the very first thing you're going to see is that group settings. And you can see they're just check boxes. So you just go through, figure out which ones you want and which ones you don't. And this modifies the default settings for all of your users. I do recommend, if this is your first time being an administrator for video conferencing, if you're unsure, grab a subject matter expert or two in your office, or even really high adoption users that are going to have opinions on if a feature is really needed or not. You guys can decide together. Now, some of the ones that we get questions about are, what is this personal meeting ID? In short, users can do two things. They can schedule a one-off meeting that inserts this random unique join meeting. If you're scheduling, that's pretty common, but there's an added benefit to having your own personal meeting number. And by and large, we recommend just using your phone number, your user's phone numbers, because it's already unique and easy to remember. That helps with meetings that I don't schedule, or meetings that I schedule that I just want to use my virtual conference room, that people know if I'm in the office, it's always open. As long as I'm in that meeting, it's open. And it's really great for things like creating that conducive environment for, hey, can I ask you a quick question? Join my meeting real quick. No scheduling, you just jump right in. So I would leave that. It's turned on by default. I would leave that. Other settings we get asked about a lot in here are, I'm looking at my list, forgive me when I look over, you're going to look at the ability to turn off the desktop app. This is, again, if you're in a lockdown environment and your users cannot install the BlueJeans app, we can turn off the prompt that encourages them to do so, and it will just push them to the browser. If you have folks that already have the desktop app installed, no problem. It'll still recognize and join them using that desktop app. If they don't, it'll shoot straight to the browser. Other common requests in there are, how do I change the default time zone for new users? They can change it themselves, but this is the default for everybody when they're brand new. And then individual features, like how do I turn off remote desktop control? For that, I'm going to go to this next option here on the left called Manage Features. If I expand these, that very first one is how I turn off remote desktop control if it's just not relevant to my environment. Other common requests are in this user setting. If I scroll down, there we go. We often get asked, how do I make it so people cannot join meetings unless the moderator is there? Uncheck that Start Meeting Without Moderator to change that setting. There's also a couple of universities have asked, how do I disable chat if I just want students to pay attention to the professor, or if you're doing distance learning, even for some younger grades, and you don't want to have to worry about that direct chat component, you can disable that as well. And then last but not least, how do I make sure when people join, they are automatically muted so that I don't have to worry about that setting with every single meeting? People can, of course, still unmute themselves, but this just makes sure when they join, they're auto-muted, and it limits those distractions a little bit. Okay, I'm going to skip Manage Users for just a second. We're going to come back to that because we talked about the landing page and the logo, and I want to show you how easy that is. Notice we have two tabs here at the top, one for logo, one for landing page. The logo is as simple as getting your organization's full color and the white version, dragging and dropping it, and that's it. What that will do is it's going to change the logo from BlueJeans to your corporate logo in all these various places like you see here. The white one just allows you to change it in these two sections at the bottom where it has a dark background. So you're going to want the white so that it shows up properly. And then if you want to get extra crafty, if you want to change our BlueJeans app logo, you can put your own design there as well. On the landing page, I just have to click Enable and type in your domain. Typically, this is your corporate email domain if you own it, and click Request. As long as nobody else is using your domain, it'll be automatically approved, and then your users can go to acme.bluejeans.com or whatever it is that your company name is. Again, this helps also when we talk about adding new users, and we're going to circle back to that. This is also where you can change the primary and the background colors to match your branded color scheme. Okay, let me turn that off so I don't reset it for our org and toggle back over to make sure we did anything. So we talked about how to manage group settings. We looked at custom landing page and we looked at the logo. Step 2 is one we're going to skip for now. And that feels weird to say because I always am encouraging customers to do this right off the bat. This is integrating your conference rooms so that there's the one button to join a BlueJeans meeting. In today's environment, people are working from home. So we're going to say, put pause on this one, let your IT know that it is an option. And when the time is right, do circle back, but it's not something you're going to need for day one of a work remote environment. So that brings us over to creating users' accounts. Before I show you what that looks like, I'm going to click here, because I want you to see that you have options. If you're a smaller company, you have 1 to 10 licenses, it's fastest if you just enter them manually, and we'll look at that today. But if you have more than 10, that can get a little bit tedious. So there's an option where you can just copy all of your users' email addresses, paste it into the admin portal, and it's going to send them an invite with instructions to click on a link if they want a license, and they'll go in and set up their account. All in one, very, very simple. There's an option where you can do a bulk upload. If I were to click on this, it would give me a template, a CSV template. You'll go and fill out the name, first name, last name, email address, some additional setting options, and submit a support case online, and we'll go in there and batch create those for you. And there's options for domain approval and single sign-on. These are for your larger enterprises. That domain approval is what we looked at with your custom landing page. Once that domain is yours, there's now this capacity where you can auto-approve new account creation requests if they're using your corporate domain. If they're not, it'll be a manual approval requirement, and you can learn more about that if needed. And single sign-on, if you're a large organization, your IT already knows what this is. It's a great way to just make sure your BlueJeans credentials match your network credentials so that everything lines up. There's a ton of added benefits there. If that applies to you, you probably know what it is. So just send that link to your network admin. So with that, let me go show you how to add manually new user accounts. Close this, and I'm going to jump back into our admin portal. And I'm going to click on Manage Users. Now, my organization has single sign-on turned on, but I don't see the option that would be here that says Invite new users. That's the one that you would click, paste some email addresses, and it sends an invite. So if that's for you, you would see that. We just don't see it in my demo environment. But I do see the option to add in new users. So we're going to pretend as we go. I'm going to say that I need to add an account for Bob Smith. I'm going to pick his username as bob.smith. Pick something that's uniform for everybody so that it's easy to remember. And I'm going to enter Bob's email, bob@abc.com. And just in case we already used that for testing, let me throw in a couple of numbers there. I'm also going to create Bob his unique meeting ID. Again, the best practices there, do a phone number for the sake of now. Going to throw in a couple of numbers. It's worth noting that if I were to click off of that, it tells you exactly how long that can be, 9 to 18 digits. So let me just throw in some stuff. And you're going to want to set up their original moderator passcode. That moderator passcode is if I join one of Maggie's meetings today, maybe she's hosting, but I'm going to be her backup. It's going to give me the link to join that meeting and the moderator passcode so that, like her, I'm a head honcho. I can record. I can do all the things that are typically limited just to that moderator role. Then I'm going to click continue. Oh, then I'm going to actually enter a moderator code, and then I'm going to click continue. That's actually just going to jump me over. See, Bob Smith has been taken. I should have guessed that. There we go. It's actually just going to jump me over to this tab 2, and this is where I can say what permissions Bob should have. So maybe I need Bob to be an administrator with me, so he can go in here, add and create user accounts, and change all those settings. There's also this great option for Command Center, which I'll give you a quick cheat of what that looks like in just a second. Matter of fact, here, let me do this. I'm going to open it in a new tab because it's just nerd heaven. Command Center is, I want to look at how my services are being used and have the ability to have live in real-time insight to meetings that are taking place. So perhaps I have a CEO in a meeting who's saying he's having trouble. My tier 1 team could get into that live session and do some real-time troubleshooting. They can join his meeting. They can mute people, whatever the case may be. There's a ton of really great options in there. So I'm not going to spend too much time here today, but this is a really fun one to circle back to. And that help desk admin training that we talked about does include training on this component. Okay, let's circle back. If you want someone to have access to Command Center, maybe you don't want them to be administrators. They don't need to manage features and users, but they do need insight for help desk purposes. You can turn off admin and turn on Command Center because these are two different privileges. When you turn on Command Center, you get to determine what exactly they're going to see. So you can limit it to the various BlueJeans products. You can determine maybe I want them to see data, but I don't want them to have live meeting control, or their help desk, and I absolutely do. I can turn that one on. I can also hide participants' names. So if they're just looking at analytics and we want to protect personally identifiable information, you can check that box as well. Also in here, if you have multiple BlueJeans services, you can turn on BlueJeans events for certain users, and you can set up the initials for delegate scheduling. So I can say, yes, they can have delegate scheduling, and you can even assign delegates in advance. Then I'm just going to go in and select what features I might need to turn off for them or turn on. So remember, we had options at the admin level to enable or disable features. You have options at the user level as well. So maybe most people don't need remote desktop control, so I turned it off on the admin level, but Bob is in IT and I do want him to have it so he can help with troubleshooting. Last but not least, if you want to have a look at what that email is going to look like for your own knowledge, you can click on that and see what information your users are going to be armed with, and click Add User. And that's it. I'm going to click Clear, and I'm going to step out of that so I don't randomly start creating new user accounts. If I go back to Manage Users, this is where I can see a list of all of our users. And if I were to click on any of them, it would look exactly like what we just looked at, and I can go in there and make changes. Okay, so let's make sure we covered everything. We did the admin controls. We're skipping task 2. We created admin or user accounts. Now that we have this set up, we've got to figure out how to communicate all of this awesomeness to your end users. And there's 2 ways that we recommend going about this. First and foremost, you're going to want to have a look at the different training options available so that you can decide what training path is best for your culture, for your users. And then you can set expectations when you send out that launch announcement email that says training is required, and make it time bound. Because if you don't say due, by end of 2 weeks, we'll just put it off. Even if you're not tracking it, we always recommend to make it time bound. So let me open this and show you the different training options. Again, these are dedicated paths that are ready to go, and they're all on demand. So I'm going to click on BlueJeans Training. Notice when I do this, I have a quick start path. This is everything an end user might know in 15 minutes or less. When you copy and paste to throw this into your email, or you just give them this link, whichever you prefer, they're going to watch a video on what to do to get started, how to set up their account if they want to change their time zone or modify their personal meeting ID or whatever. Then you can only include the scheduling options that are relevant for your organization. For example, most schools use Google. They don't use Outlook, Office 365, so you can delete those and just give them the Google link. If you have a large organization and it's all-encompassing, you can keep all of them there and people can click and choose which one they want to watch. The same goes for joining. There is joining via a desktop app and joining via browser. You can send one or both. Right below that are those quick start guides that I told you about. Let me open up what one of these looks like. They're all laid out in the same fashion in that it starts with how to schedule first. So if I select the Office 365 job aid, it's going to be tailored to scheduling for Office 365. Then it's going to talk about how to join with the BlueJeans desktop app. And then side 2, if you print it out, it's side A and side B, talks about the in-meeting controls and tips. So you might share it with your users. If you're still a print environment, you can tell them to print it out, have it on their desk. Chances are they will look at it one time and never again, but it gives them comfort in knowing that is there. And it kind of helps drive those training best practices home. Okay, let's close that out. Next, so we have our quick start here at the top. We have additional features. So if they want to learn more about delegate scheduling, there's a quick 2 to 3 minute video clip on that. There's also sharing content, how to access my recording, a ton of great stuff in here. And then here at the bottom are those best practices for working remote that we've been talking about. You can share the PDF, which talks about how to adapt in a work remote environment. So how do you stay focused? How do you maintain that culture where you can say, hey, I have a quick question, or can I stop by your desk, right, in a virtual environment, and prevent that isolation and keep people motivated? How to communicate with your team, and how to make sure you have a good, healthy work-life balance. Because if it's your first time working remote, what you're going to find is you tend to work more hours when you're working remote than you do if you're in the office, because there's no clear cutoff. It's so easy to say, oh, I know it's 6 o'clock, but just 5 more minutes. And then you look down and it's 8 o'clock. So it talks about how to make some healthy, balanced decisions. And then at the bottom, it talks about how to use BlueJeans Meetings. So how to make it easy, download all those apps to make your life easier, how to look and sound your best, share your video, dress to impress, how do you look directly in the camera lens to make eye contact, stay muted, things of that nature. My personal favorite is how to ensure quality. So I live in the middle of nowhere. And up until recently, my internet worked when it was darn good and ready. And you didn't have a choice because we have a mom and pop local provider. So I knew all these tips and tricks like the back of my hand. It tells your folks to test their internet. 1 Mbps up and down is enough to get the job done. 4.5 is more ideal to be all-encompassing and with all-in features and not to worry about bandwidth. If you have slow internet, move closer to your Wi-Fi, or even better, direct plug-in, because that alone will usually make a pretty big difference. You can call in on the phone instead of using VoIP as your audio. You have to turn off your video. We hate that because seeing people is so important, but if you have to, it's better to lose video than to lose out on the messaging or what's being discussed or taught. And then, and I encourage you guys to really consider this one, disconnect from VPN if it's appropriate for your organization. I know that doesn't work for everybody, but if it is not a conflict, disconnecting from the VPN will improve the home experience, and it's going to improve your network traffic using the Office infrastructure. So I always recommend that one. And it talks about the different ways to share content. Share desktop if you need to jump back and forth like I'm doing today. Share application if you're only sharing one thing like a presentation, that'll save your bandwidth. And it's going to hide things from popping up unexpectedly. And then share how to share like an actual video file. Let's see, we talked about Quick Start, we talked about features. The last thing is, if you like to have knowledge, I love to know things. So I always take the largest training class available because I want to know everything. We have full trainings that go through each one of the features. It's available in English, Spanish, French, and Japanese. And again, it's available on demand. For you administrators, I'm going to take you all the way down here at the bottom. You have some similar training resources. So these are all quick videos that recap how to get into the admin portal, how to manage user training, communication, and adoption in-house, having a look at some of the integrations that might be valuable for your workforce. Then a whole bunch of additional getting started stuff, like how do we access the getting started portal that we've been looking at all day, the PDF for the true admin guide, and how to add content to your corporate intranet and to your email. I'm going to toggle back over just to make sure I'm not skipping ahead. That is next. So we can have a look at that right now. That's actually task 2. You picked your training path. Now you've got to communicate it. So since we're there, let us have a look. That is these 2 options right here. So adding BlueJeans to your corporate internet, even if your corporate internet is, hey, we have a Word doc on all the things you might need to know on BlueJeans, that is better than all of your people coming to you to ask questions. So whatever this looks like, Word doc, SharePoint, a true intranet, we've included all the content that we recommend adding, some tips to make sure maintaining your content is as easy as possible. And then if you scroll all the way to the very bottom, the example that we have up right now is tailored to environments like yourselves that are going through these rapid deployment efforts because of the coronavirus preparedness. So it has a quick welcoming message. It talks about what is BlueJeans Meetings. And then it has the getting started path. Step 1, test your network at home. Step 2, make sure you have the right equipment that you need, a laptop, a headset, webcam, mouse, keyboard, monitors, whatever it is that's appropriate for your organization. And if and where relevant, what if they don't have equipment? How do they procure it, or what do you recommend to address? Then this is where you copy and paste that training, or just tell them to come on over to the training page, whichever works best for you. How to request a login if you're not assigning them automatically, and then those additional resources like the quick start guides they can download, the work from home, and then the link to learn more. And it closes out with how do you get help? If you have your own internal help desk, you might put that first for your common everyday questions. By and large, the majority of questions that you're going to get are really just how do I questions. And instead of being in the form of how do I share my content, you might get it in the form of how can I make sure I don't accidentally share email or chat messages that pop up. So to that end, that's going to take us over to, let me jump back over. We talked about your training. We talked about your communication. I wanted to point to this one. Sorry about that. The help desk admin training. I'm not going to open this today because we're going to talk about it in just a moment, but that's what you're going to arm your IT, your admins, and your support team with in advance so they're confident in answering those questions. Once you've picked your training path and you've got your corporate intranet up and running, you're going to look at those launch email templates. These are just ready to go emails. And if I toggle over, I'm going to click on meeting launch templates. I have this up and ready. Here's an example of what that looks like. You're going to communicate what you're doing. You can take a lot of that information that's in that intranet, that opening, and paste it here. You're going to talk about what are the next steps to get started. For this example, it has the training already included. What you're going to want to make sure you have is expectations. As of Tuesday, please make sure all your meetings are BlueJeans meetings. To that end, you're going to want to complete training by Friday, end of day next week, whatever that looks like. This is also a great place to set expectations on what you want to see in terms of, if you're at home, we recognize you may not have a dedicated desk. Couch is fine, or it's not fine. Please don't show up in your pajamas. Whatever that looks like for you, this is your time to address that in advance. All right, let me toggle us back over. We are almost done with the getting started. The last step here is, once you launch the service, how can you see what's being used, how it's going to be used, look at the analytics, look if people are having trouble. That's all about Command Center. So even if this is not going to be your job, there's a great 3-minute video that gives you the overview of what Command Center is so that you have the knowledge. But this is definitely something you're going to want to share with your IT teams and with your help desk folks. That's the end-to-end getting started, start to finish, not terribly scary. And while we went through a lot, you can really do a lot of this if you've got the right resources in a day, 2 or 3 days, without feeling like it's overwhelming once you get in and get started. And we're here to help. If you get stuck, give us a call. So with that, let me toggle us back over to our PowerPoint. There's a couple of other things that I want to arm you guys with before you leave today. First is a little bit more insight on that internal help desk training. This training is going to cover how to set up and manage users. It's going to talk about what is BlueJeans and give a super quick user introduction. It's also going to talk about live meeting control. So if my CEO is in a meeting and he's having trouble as a tier 1 or a tier 2 agent, how can I join that meeting through Command Center so I can see what the problem is and then work to drive the solution? We'll also cover, what information do you ask if you're managing tier 1 support in-house? What questions do you want to ask? And then once you have those answers, what do you do with it? I've thrown up for you guys examples at some of the common questions that are discussed in this training. We're not going to go too much in depth to this today because I appreciate that just because you're an admin doesn't mean that you're also going to do troubleshooting, but I did want you to know what is in there. So it's things like, how do I join a meeting? How do I share content? How do I reset my password? What I really appreciate about this training is it provides not only the question and the answer, but in a way that you can copy and paste and also teach your end users how to fish. So if you were to tell an end user, for example, if you have a question, go to the BlueJeans Knowledge Base Online first and search it. Your tech-savvy folks are going to do that anyway without you even having to tell them. Other folks are just going to, in one ear and out the other, they're not going to hear it and they're going to call. But if they call your internal help desk and your agents say, oh, that's a great question, there's actually articles and videos online that talk about how to join your BlueJeans meeting, let me send you those links. That's really, really easy, and it encourages folks to go out there and use the self-help resources. All right, before we open it for Q&A, let's talk additional resources and next steps. For you, for your end users, BlueJeans support has a ton of resources at the ready at support.bluejeans.com. You can come in here and type your question at the top. How do I record a meeting? Or you can even search by topic, scheduling, joining, whatever the case may be. And you'll see both written content and videos that you can watch that are tailored towards that topic. There's a great section here that's on working remotely. That's all the best practices that we've already talked about. And this is where you're going to go to access that training page that we talked about. Last but not least, if you need help, if your users need help, we are here. In this high critical rapid launch environment, we do want to remind you the best ways to engage BlueJeans so that your folks don't have to sit on hold unnecessarily. By and large, we encourage you to promote using that online knowledge base because just like it is helpful for your IT organization, it arms your end users to get answers at their fingertips without having to wait. There's also a chat option so that your users can chat with our BlueJeans engineers. I do want to set the expectations that we are prioritizing cases today for admins like yourself, for people that have really critical rapid deployment, I'm in a large event, whatever the case may be, knowing that some of these folks are working remotely for the first time. So if it's a more common question, like how do I share recording after a meeting, might take us a little bit longer to get back by design. As long as you set that expectations with your end users going back, people generally, by and large, appreciate and understand that. Anybody can call into support, but we do ask you try and save that for critical issues like admins who need help right now. Next steps. Take a moment to go out to the BlueJeans blog that is, what is it that we're doing to help our customers during this COVID-19 era. All of these links that we talked about are there for you. So go in and download the ones that appeal most to you and share this with other folks in your organization that are in a similar role and function. Then jump right into that Getting Started portal and assign out those tasks to the appropriate folks to get up and running. With that, I imagine you guys have questions. So let's turn it back over to Maggie. She's going to walk us through the live Q&A component. I'm available to answer questions as well as our subject matter experts, Liz and Stuart today. Maggie, what can we answer for our audience?
Hi, thanks, Missy. That was great. So we did have a couple questions come in, and Liz has been diligently answering them, but we'll just do them live so everyone can hear. So first, how can we quickly create accounts for all users?
So that depends on, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Missy. So yes, that depends on how your organization is set up. If you're setting up a number of users, let's say anywhere between 1 to 20, we absolutely recommend going into the admin page and setting up those accounts individually. That's going to be the fastest way that will allow you to create them on the fly. The second option, if you are creating a larger number of accounts, let's say anywhere from 20 to up to 100, our support team does have a way to bulk upload all of those accounts on your behalf. One thing I will say, there is a spreadsheet that needs to be completed. That information is on our website. It's also in the Q&A field here. But fill that information out, get it over to our support team. Due to the large volume of requests that they're seeing, that could take a little bit of time, on average 24 to 48 hours, but certainly just keep that in mind because it's not as instant as the first option. The third option for creating accounts is single sign-on. That does take a little bit longer, so to the point of rapid deployment and everything we're talking about today, that might not be an option unless you have someone who is able to quickly set up single sign-on within your enterprise. As long as your single sign-on provider works with SAML 2.0, we can do the integration, have those accounts created automatically so that users can authenticate with the same credentials that they would use for any of their other applications within your organization.
Awesome. All right, and our next question is, can we push the desktop app to all our users via SCCM? We have a large group of users who can't download apps on their own.
Absolutely. Also a great question. So we definitely can. If you have an environment that is mainly all Macs or PCs or a combination of both, we have the appropriate information for you guys to take the desktop app and push that out to all of your users. We always recommend having the latest version out there. Right now we're at 2.19, so that's going to have the best features, functionality that you're going to want to make sure you push out to all of your users. So you can do that. You can also do the same if you do have an Outlook shop and users cannot download the add-in to get that installed on their Outlook tool. You can also push the Outlook add-in to those users as well, or Office 365. The goal there, making sure that all of your users have their accounts created right away, but then also have the desktop app and the scheduling tool of their choice at their fingertips to start moving forward quickly. Absolute worst case scenario, if they can't get in via the desktop app, as Missy mentioned in the beginning, we support browser access as well, so users can come in over Chrome, Firefox, and Safari to get into the meeting quickly.
Perfect. And then we have one more question. Are there discounts for nonprofit organizations?
I can jump in and take that one. We've actually gone a step further in that Our online pricing has been drastically discounted for all of our customers because we appreciate that a lot of companies are having to launch unexpectedly. So Rob, I would encourage you to go to BlueJeans.com, check out the pricing options in there, and then we do have free services available for our first responders that are out there on the front lines, helping communities during the coronavirus effort. As needs continue to progress, all of our discounts, we're trying to make them available across the board to keep it very, very easy for everybody. We'll publish them on BlueJeans.com. Good question.
Awesome. Thank you, Missy. Well, thank you everyone for joining today. I hope you found this valuable. We will send out the presentation as well as a recording of this afterwards. And if you have any questions, please just reply to that email. So thank you guys so much. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.